for 2 or 3 more questions. Lady in the back row.
Not create a constitution that is strong and stable, we will have a vacuum. The problem is that we've had 42 years of Gaddafi, and we've owned the revolution, now we need to own our country, we need to start building. And the problem is like South Africa, we need to take care, we need to build it properly and to have a strong institution for women's rights, for everybody, from Tripoli to Benghazi. And if we don't do that here now in Tripoli, in the States with Libyans there, we will have problems. We'll have a vacuum of power, we'll have corruption, and we still have corruption. We had it in the 42 years, and we'll have it now if we do not take care of it. My question to you and the audience, especially the Libyans in the audience, if we are not careful with this constitution, corruption will continue.
Can I comment briefly on that?
Please.
I think, and with no disrespect to anyone who's commented, I think what Gaddafi succeeded in doing, he's achieved much in his time, all negative, but what he succeeded in doing was marginalizing law and importance of law, which means that when we have healthy debates, intelligent debates with people who are considered, elites or knowledgeable, conversations happen where you say, actually, let's not talk about the Constitution now. There's more urgent things, which is terrifying, because actually the Constitution is what's going to guarantee your ability to have conversations about the other things. And so it's absolutely quicksand. We might as well just go back.
Gentleman in the middle.
I just wanted to ask, with this very intelligent sort of dialogue, are you going to make some recommendations to be presented at the end of this dialogue? And if this is the case, then I would actually refer to the comment made by Dr. Juma about the importance of trying to have sustainability of the, especially of the national fortunes. That is to say that Libya is an oil exporting country and they have a lot of surpluses. And I know that in some countries like Sweden, they have it in the constitution that any surplus over the budget should go to this sort of special state funds. And no one can touch it unless it's sovereign wealth funds. Yes. And that is, no one can touch it. And I think this is something that should be actually, we should stress on it and should be included in these recommendations.
Thank you very much. In answer to your question about whether there will be recommendations this evening is more of a dialogue. And it will be the beginning of a series of discussions, not just here, but elsewhere. And it's not really, I think, for the Bingham Centre to make specific recommendations. The goal has been to set out a number of options, one of which in the paper is looking at the experiences of countries that have put together sovereign wealth funds and funds for future generations to ensure that, as Mr. El-Ghamati was saying, money which is proceeds of natural resource investment are then ploughed back into natural resource investment in the future to ensure that that remains a constant stream of revenue for future generations to benefit from. But I think Khaled will say a little bit more about future next steps at the end of this evening. Yes, lady with the blue arm, which is all little chap with the blue arm, it's all I can see, I'm afraid.
I'd just like to ask, directed at Sir Geoffrey, you mentioned frequently South Africa. I was just wondering, when will the Libyan constitution diverge from the South African one? Because although you can say that it's just a model, we may delve too deeply into it.
Yes, that's a very good question. Yeah. I happen to mention the South African Constitution a number of times because it was a sort of model for the Africa at that particular moment. And it also was very original. Suddenly, issues relating to holding government to account, which had not really been part of a constitutional process in the past, we can say, why don't we make that an absolute constitutional right? Freedom of information, for example. Have an anti-corruption commission so that that there is integrity in public life and in private life. So a lot of new ideas came out of the South African Constitution. I think Libya would be quite wrong to take all the issues from the South African Constitution, or even most of them. I think it would also be equally wrong not to look at them, because for its time it was really an extraordinary constitution which has been copied all over the world. Even the right to administrative justice, which I mentioned earlier, has crept all through to Malawi, to Kenya, to the Caribbean, and into the European Charter, the right to good administration. Now, you may say, well, let's just go back to what we've got and what we knew, even though we forgot it over these years, and not look at other places. But I think that would be in dereliction of some duty. It's not for me to tell anybody what to do, but I think there's so many good examples these days from which we can all learn. Certainly, if ever a new constitution was developed in the United Kingdom, we would look to all these new constitutions, the right to internet access, for example, and that sort of thing, for ideas, and also for values which we might not have thought in the past, way back then, well before you were born, well before many other people around here were born, that were really matters for a constitution. The other point that was made, sorry, you didn't ask this question, but I think it was behind what you had to say as well, is the person behind you also raised the question, and was raised here about, are constitutions important? Most people don't think they are. Well, they may not, but they do start kicking and screaming and squealing and crying when somebody abuses their power who ought not to do so. And it is constitutions which can try and prevent that. They can only go so far. Without them, you slide much more quickly into the kind of abuse of power that we've recently seen. With them, you have a reasonable chance of avoiding it. But there's lots else that needs to be done. Writing the Constitution, you can't just congratulate yourself like the Russians and the Belarus and say, hooray, we've done it. Then you have to start educating. Then you have to start training from the top to the bottom and in schools as well.